Osiris. The treatise on Isis and Osiris was written by Plutarch, himself an initiate into the Osiris mysteries, to a fellow initiate, a woman named Clea. It was written at Delphi in the 2nd century A.D. It is the only connected account remaining of the death of Osiris and the wanderings of Isis. Though of so late a date, it is found to be correct on the whole when checked by the inscriptions and sculpture of pharaonic times. The so-called ritual of Dendera is our principal authority for the worship of Osiris in the chief temples of Egypt on the festivals of the month of Khoaika. The ritual is sculptured on the walls of the temple of Dendera and gives in great detail the rites in use, and even the size and material of these symbolical images. The inscription dates to the Ptolemaic period, but the ritual is considerably earlier. Mystery plays of the death of Osiris and of the repulse of Set by Horus appear to have been enacted on certain great occasions at the chief centers of worship. The principal part was that of Horus, which was acted by the pharaoh himself in the capital, and by the chief local nobilities in the provincial centers. Osiris. In the beginning, Ra cursed Nut, and his curse was that none of her children should be born on any day of any year. And Nut cried to Thoth, who loved her, Thoth, the twice great, god of magic and learning and wisdom, he whom the Greeks called Hermes Trismegistos. Though the curse of the great god Ra, once uttered, could never be recalled, Thoth, by his wisdom, opened a way of escape. He went to the moon god, whose brightness was almost equal to that of the sun itself, and challenged him to a game of dice. Great were the stakes on either side, but the moon's were the greatest, for he wagered his own light. Game after game they played, and always the luck was with Thoth, till the moon would play no more. Then Thoth, the twice great, gathered up the light he had won, and by his power and might he formed it into 5 days. And since that time, the moon has not had light enough to shine throughout the month, but dwindles away into darkness, and then comes slowly to his full glory. For the light of the 5 whole days was taken from him. And these 5 days Thoth placed between the end of the old year and the beginning of the new year, keeping them distinct from both. And on these 5 days the 5 children of Nut were born: Osiris on the 1st day, Horus on the 2nd, Set on the 3rd, Isis on the 4th, and Nephthys on the 5th. Thus the curse of Ra was both fulfilled and made of no effect, for the days on which the children of Nut were born belonged to no year. When Osiris was born, wonders and marvels, prodigies and signs were heard and seen throughout the world, for a voice cried over the whole earth, "The Lord of all comes forth to the light." And a woman, drawing water from the holy place of the temple, was filled with the divine afflatus, and rushed forth crying, "Osiris the king is born." Now Egypt was a barbarous country where men fought together and ate human flesh. Naught did they know of the gods. Lawless were they, and savage. But Osiris became the king of Egypt, and he showed his people how to till the land and to plant corn and the vine, and he taught them the honor due to the gods, and made laws and abolished their barbarous and savage customs. Wherever he went, the people bowed at his feet, for they loved the very ground he trod on, and whatever he commanded, that they did. Thus did Osiris rule over the Egyptians till, with music playing and banners flying, he passed out of Egypt to bring all nations beneath his gracious sway. But Set hated his brother Osiris, and he gathered to himself 72 conspirators, and with them was Aso, queen of Ethiopia, and they made a plan that when Osiris returned, they should kill him and place Set on the throne. But they hid their plans, and with smiling faces went out to meet Osiris when he re-entered Egypt in triumph. In secret they met again and again. In secret also they prepared a coffer made of costly wood, painted and decorated with rich designs and glowing colors, an interweaving of tints and a wealth of cunning workmanship, so that all who saw it longed to have it for their own. Set, that wicked one, had in secret measured the body of Osiris, and the coffer was made to fit the body of the king, for this was part of the plan. When all was ready, Set bade his brother and the 72 conspirators to a feast in his great banqueting hall. When the feast was over, they sang the chant of Maneros, as was the custom, and slaves carried round cups of wine and threw garlands of flowers round the necks of the guests and poured perfume upon them, till the hall was filled with sweet odors. And while their hearts were glad, slaves entered bearing the coffer, and all the guests cried out at the sight of its beauty. Then Set stood up in his place and said, "He who lies down in this coffer, and whom it fits, to that man I will give it." His words were sweet as honey, but in his heart was the bitterness of evil. One after one, the conspirators lay down in the coffer with jests and laughter. For one it was too long, for another it was too short, and for a third it was too wide, and for a fourth too narrow. Then came Osiris to take his turn, and he, all unsuspecting, lay down in it. At once the conspirators seized the lid and clapped it on. Some nailed it firmly in its place, while others poured molten lead into all the openings, lest he should breathe and live. Thus died the great Osiris, he who is called Un-Nefer the Triumphant, and by his death he entered into the Duat, and became the king of the dead and ruler of those who are in the west. The conspirators lifted the chest, which was now a coffin, and carried it to the riverbank. They flung it far into the water, and Hapi, the Nile god, caught it and carried it upon his stream to the sea. The great green waters received it, and the waves bore it to Byblos and lifted it into a great tamarisk tree that grew by the shore. Then the tree shot forth great branches and put out leaves and flowers to make a fit resting place for the god, and the fame of its beauty went throughout the land. In Byblos ruled King Malcander and his wife Queen Athenias. They came to the seashore to gaze upon the tree, for naught could be seen but leaves and blossoms which hid the coffin from all eyes. Then King Malcander gave command, and the tree was cut down and carried to the royal palace to make a pillar therein, for it was worthy to be used in a king's house. All men wondered at its beauty, though none knew that it held the body of a god. Now Isis feared Set exceedingly. His smooth words did not deceive her, and she knew of his enmity to Osiris, but the great king would not believe in his brother's wickedness. When the soul of Osiris passed from his body, at once Isis was aware that he was dead, though no man told her. She took her little son, whom men call Harpocrates, or Horus the child, and fled with him to the marshes of the Delta, and hid him in the city of Pe. Ancient and gray was this city of Pe, and it stood on an island. There dwelt the goddess Uazet, whom men call also Buto and Latona, for she is worshipped under many names. Uazet took the child and sheltered him, and Isis by her divine power loosed the island from its moorings, and it floated on the surface of the great green waters, so that no man could tell where to find it. For she feared the power of Set, lest he should destroy the child as he had destroyed the father. As the souls of men cannot rest until the funeral rites are performed and the funeral sacrifices offered, she journeyed, solitary and alone, to seek the body of her husband and bury it as became his greatness. Many people did she meet, both men and women, but none had seen the chest, and in this matter her power was of no avail. Then she thought to ask the children, and at once they told her of a painted coffer floating on the Nile. And to this day, children have prophetic power and can declare the will of the gods and the things that are yet for to come. Thus, asking always of the children, Isis came to Byblos. She sat by the great green waters, and the maidens of Queen Athenias came to bathe and disport themselves in the waves. Then Isis spoke to them, and braided their hair and adjusted their jewels. The breath of the goddess was sweeter than the odors of the land of Punt, and it perfumed the hair and the jewels and the garments of the maidens. When they returned to the palace, Queen Athenias asked them whence they had obtained the perfume, and they answered, "A woman, strange and sad, sat by the seashore when we went to bathe, and she braided our hair and adjusted our jewels, and from her came the perfume, though we know not how." Queen Athenias went to the shore to see the strange woman, and conversed with her, and they spoke together as mothers speak, for each had a little son. The son of Isis was far away, and the son of Athenius was sick unto death. Then rose up Isis, the mighty in magic, the skillful healer, and said, "Bring me to your son." Together the goddess and the queen returned to the palace, and Isis took little Dictys in her arms and said, "I can make him strong and well, but in my own way will I do it, and none must interfere." Every day Queen Athenius marveled at her son. From a little puling babe he became a strong and healthy child, but Isis spoke no word, and none knew what she did. Athenius questioned her maidens, and they answered, "We know not what she does, but this we know, that she feeds him not, and at night she bars the doors of the hall of the pillar, and piles the fire high with logs, and when we listen, naught can we hear but the twittering of a swallow." Athenius was filled with curiosity, and hid herself at night in the great hall, and watched how Isis barred the doors and piled the logs upon the fire, till the flames rose high and scorching. Then, sitting before the fire, she made a space between the blazing logs, a space that glowed red and crimson, and in that space she laid the child, and turning herself into the form of a swallow, she circled round the pillar, mourning and lamenting. And the lamentation was like the twittering of a swallow. Queen Athenius shrieked and snatched the child from the fire and turned to flee, but before her stood Isis the goddess, tall and terrible. "O foolish mother," said Isis, "why didst thou seize the child? But a few days longer, and all that is mortal in him would have been burnt away, and as the gods would he have been, immortal and forever young." A great awe fell upon the queen, for she knew that she looked upon one of the gods. In humblest wise, she and King Melkender prayed the goddess to accept a gift. All the riches of Byblos were spread before her, but to her they were as naught. "Give me," she said, "what this pillar holds, and I shall be content." At once the workmen were summoned, and they took down the pillar and split it open, and lifted out the coffin. And Isis took sweet spices and scented blossoms. These she strewed upon the pillar, then wrapped it in fine linen and gave it to the king and queen. And all the people of Byblos worship it to this day, because once it held the body of a god. But Isis took the coffin on a boat and sailed away from Byblos, and when the waves of the river Phaedrus, lashed by the wind, threatened to sweep the coffin away, she dried up the water by her magical spells. Then, in a solitary place, she opened the coffin, and gazing upon the face of the dead god, she mourned and lamented. Now some say that when Isis left Byblos, she took Dictys with her, and that he fell out of the boat and was drowned. Others say that the sound of her lamentation was so terrible in its grief that his heart broke and he died. But I think that he remained in Byblos, and because he had lain in the arms of the Divine Mother and had passed through the purifying fire, he grew up to be a great and noble king, ruling his people wisely. Then Isis hid the coffin and set out for the city of Pe, where it stood on the floating island and where her little son Harpocrates was safe under the care of Uazet, the goddess of the north country. And while she was away, Set came hunting wild boars with his dogs. He hunted by moonlight, for he loved the night, when all evil red things are abroad, and the air was filled with the whoop and hollow of the huntsmen, and the cries of the dogs as they rushed after their quarry. And as he dashed past, Set saw the painted chest, the colors glinting and gleaming in the moonlight. At that sight, hatred and anger came upon him like a red cloud, and he raged like a panther of the south. He dragged the coffin from the place where it was hidden and forced it open. He seized the body and tore it into 14 pieces, and by his mighty and divine strength, he scattered the pieces throughout the land of Egypt, and he laughed and said, "It is not possible to destroy the body of a god, but I have done what is impossible. I have destroyed Osiris." And his laughter echoed across the world, and those who heard it fled trembling. When Isis returned, she found naught but the broken coffin, and knew Set had done this thing. All her search was now to begin again. she took a little shallop made of papyrus reeds lashed together and sailed through the marshes to look for the pieces of Osiris's body, and all the birds and beasts went with her to help her. And to this day the crocodiles will not touch a boat of papyrus reeds, for they think it is the weary goddess still pursuing her search. A mighty and a cunning enemy was hers, and by wisdom only could he be overcome. Therefore, wheresoever she found a fragment of the divine body, she built a beautiful shrine and performed the funeral rites as though she had buried it there. But in truth, she took the fragments with her, and when, after long wanderings, she had found all, by the mighty power of her magic, she united them again as one body. For when Horus the child should be grown to manhood, then he should fight with Set and avenge his father, and after he had obtained the victory, Osiris should live again. But until that day, Osiris lives in the Duat, where he rules the dead wisely and nobly as he ruled the living when on earth. For though Horus fights with Set and the battles rage furiously, yet the decisive victory is not yet accomplished, and Osiris has never returned to earth again.